Hi everyone, I'm back with example 2 on looking at changes to the basic y equals cosine x or y equals sine x curves and trying to interpret how changes in the equation will translate to changes in the graph. So for example 2, I've got y equals -4 cosine 2 pi x minus 3. I take a look at this and the first thing that I see is my a value is -4. So yes, I have a reflection over the x-axis. My amplitude now is 4 because that's the absolute value of a. The period I find once I factor b out. So I've got y equals -4 cosine. I'm going to factor out a 2 and on the inside get pi x minus 3. Now just to keep this, looking like the parent function's up here. Here's my function rewritten. I have a b value of 2. Therefore, the period is going to be 2 pi over 2. And so that means that I am going to see that means that the period is pi. And I am going to see one full cosine curve between 0 and pi. Now, the HPS is the horizontal phase shift. And how does this work? Well, I'm going to take sorry, I just had a blank. I'm going to look at this value here inside of my equation. There is no h value attached, so I have no phase shift. It's going to start at 0, 0. Now, what kind of vertical translation do I have? I have a vertical translation of down 3. Okay. Moving on. Now, we're going to do some graphing. I'm going to graph one period, so one full curve of cosine of -3 cosine 1/2 x. We're going to remember what that basic parent function looks like, right? For sine, it goes like this, okay? So I'm going to do a little bit of this. I'm going to, and here are the notes over here to summarize and just a little recap on graphing. So I'm going to look at any phase shift that happens. I'm going to look at k. There is no k value here. So there is no phase shift. It doesn't move up or down. Now I'm going to take the amplitude, the a value, and look at the new axis on the graph. Well, since it didn't shift up or down, I'm now looking at cosine curve, which looks like this. I drew the sine curve before, sorry about that. Here's the cosine curve, and it has not been shifted up or down, so its axis is still right here at the x-axis, but it has been reflected and multiplied by a factor of 3. So I've got a reflection, and I've got a vertical stretch times 3. So what that means is that instead of reaching up to +1 and down to -1, its new maximum here is going to be at 3, and the minimum is going to be at -3. So I know that my cosine curve doesn't move up or down. I know that it gets reflected over the x-axis and stretched by a factor of 3. Now I can tell that the b value here is equal to 1/2. So if I'm going to I think I got a little bit ahead of myself here. I got the amplitude, sorry. The h value. There is no horizontal shift, so I don't have to worry about adding the period to the h value and shifting that curve just yet. But I do know, so I know it's going to start at 0 and end at 2 pi. And so now I'm going to take that cosine curve that's been flipped over, start at low, go through 0, go to +3, go to 0, and now go down to -3. And here is the graph of -3 cosine 1/2 x. Oops, I made a mistake. See if you can spot the mistake. As I erase my cosine curve, you should be thinking to yourself, well, you don't know you didn't use the 1/2, right? I started and then I got distracted. I have to figure out what the period is by taking 2 pi and dividing it by my b value. So I'm going to take 2 pi and divide it by 1/2. Keep change, flip that, and get 2 pi times 2. I'm going to get 4 pi. So I now, instead of ending at 2 pi, my ending is going to be at 4 pi, which means between 0 and 2 pi, I should see half of the cosine curve, which is what that 1/2 is all about. So now I can start down here at the -3, go to 0 here, halfway between 0 and 2 pi is pi, go up to 3 at 2 pi. This value would be 3 pi, down, and all the way down to the low point. So what I see is half of the cosine curve between 0 and 2 pi, and a full cosine curve between 0 and 4 pi, and that's how my period fits in. Okay, so moving on to the next example on page 29, we're sort of going to put it all together now and graph and figure out all of these transformations that take place. I will see you for that in the next video.